Hi, Seahawk fans. Welcome back to another episode of the Seahawks Playbook podcast. I'm your host, Bill Alvstead, sitting down as always with co-host Mr. Keith Myers. And we've got a special guest in today, Bryce Coots of the Hawks Eye podcast. Welcome in, Bryce. How you doing?
Great, guys. Well, super happy to be here and talk Hawks with you.
Yeah, absolutely. So you've gone through a little evolution in the last few weeks on the podcast journey. And so why don't you talk to me a little bit about your new show and kind of what's going on?
Yeah, so I basically have kind of separated from the Hawk Zone rundown with Ryan McMillan. We kind of got to a point where we realized that the podcast wasn't going to work the way that we intended it to, just based on schedules and stuff like that. And there were certain things I wanted to do on the show that just weren't kind of in the same viewpoint as Ryan. So we decided it would be best for the long term for both of us just to kind of go our separate ways and do our own thing. So I've now pivoted to more daily content, which is going to start kind of coming out here now as the season starts. So I'll be putting out about 4 to 5 shows a week, 2 live shows, pregame, postgame. I will be doing film breakdowns with Dan Viens in our Hawks Film Lab once a week. So we'll kind of pick an area to really dive into the All 22 and break it down, and a couple different things here and there. Got a couple things in the iron with some other content creators around the NFC West. So yeah, it just felt at the time the right decision to make. So I've kind of gone out on my own here, and rebuilding a channel from scratch is never an easy task, but it's definitely something I'm looking forward to doing.
Yeah. Well, hopefully you'll get a jump start on all that. You've got a nice audience kind of built in, and congratulations on stepping out and doing that. It's always fun to cover the team and in the way that you want to do it, with your priorities, and teaming up with Dan is always a great choice. He's definitely a friend of the show, been on probably, at least a dozen times over the years. And we really enjoy that. So we enjoy having you on. It's nice to have that fresh perspective, especially in this show, looking around the NFC West. I think it's a great time to do the show. Like, everybody's been focused on the roster. We've been focused on training camp. We've been focused on everything except for competing in real games. We just haven't gotten there yet. And it's about a week and a half or a week prior to kickoff. So now it's a great time to kind of pivot and turn our attention to our rivalries in the NFC West. We play 6 games combined, and it's always interesting to kind of take a deeper look, a deeper dive into that. Keith, welcome in. How you doing?
Doing good. There's a lot to talk about. Like, we our last show, we got together and we kind of what is going on? All of a sudden
You're good.
I can't
You're
hear
good.
anything. Can you hear
You're
me?
good here. Oh, sure.
Oh, all of a sudden I couldn't hear myself. Weird. All right. So yeah, our last show we previewed the roster, and we did a pretty good job of figuring out who the Seahawks were going to keep in that. There's been some significant changes and some significant moves that I think we need to discuss at least a little bit here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, let's get into that, and we'll get into it a little bit more too when we get to the Seahawks portion of the preview for sure. But yes, absolutely, did want to talk on the roster moves today. Just kind of solidified the roster. Seattle officially signed linebacker Chaz Surratt to the 53-man roster. In correspondence with that move, they waived DeAnthony Bell off the roster. I'm absolutely positive they would like to bring him back onto the practice squad. We'll see how that affects the practice squad. They officially added linebacker Chris Paul, which was a move they talked about yesterday. It was talked about, but not officially announced. And wide receiver slash kick returner Courtney Jackson to the practice squad, waived Anthony Tyrus, the running back, and outside linebacker Jalen Gaines. So those were the roster solidifications that happened today. Any comments on that?
Not on those. I mean, DeAnthony Bell getting cut, I think I'm not sure I like that move. He showed out in camp really well, and we know what he can do on special teams. I was surprised for him to be gone. Yeah, I mean, it really just comes down to like I know they needed roster spots, but there's still some weirdness on the roster that eventually they're going to have to work themselves, and get figured out. So,
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there are some players that, that are peripheral for sure on this roster. Connor O'Toole. I like Connor O'Toole, but I think maybe, these are kind of strategy moves right now. Like D'Anthony Bell, I'm sure they're hoping he's not going to get picked off so that he can come back. But I would have maybe gone with Connor O'Toole just because I like the depth currently at the edge spot. And I really like D'Anthony Bell, especially on special teams. So we'll see kind of how that works out. One thing I did want to talk about is one un-Seahawks related move that happened today. That's just really the big move across the NFL. And that's the Cowboys trading Micah Parsons to the Packers for 2 first-round picks and Kenny Clark. I need your comments on this because this really does, I think, impact a player that is outstanding by any measure, and then going to a better contending team in the NFC. Your thoughts?
Well, they definitely. Go ahead. You start.
Oh, I was just gonna say, like, I look at it for me, and it changes the landscape a little bit in the NFC for me now. Like, I initially had the Eagles and the Bucks kind of as the two. Like, I looked at what the Bucks did and where they're at, and before the injuries obviously have taken place a little bit for them, that they were going to be one of those teams that was going to kind of be in that top. And I looked at the NFC North and kind of went, Detroit and Green Bay are going to fight out. I didn't know if Green Bay really was going to be able to kind of get over the hump. They've got the offensive weapons, but it was on the defensive side I was more kind of worried for them, at least, to see if they could actually do anything. And now they've added Micah Parsons, and I look at that and go, yeah, okay, you guys have literally pushed the chips into the table and said we're going after trying to get to a Super Bowl this year with this maneuver, because I believe it's $47 million per year is what the contract kind of come out to, or something insane to that point. And I'm like, you literally now, because you do have Jordan Love still that eventually will probably want to re-up in some capacity with his if he keeps playing it the way he has. And you just took a young rookie receiver in Matthew Golden, who everyone seems to think is quite good. And if he plays out, like, there's going to be a lot of money allocated in certain areas that you're now going to have to really shape that salary cap going forward. And yes, I get it gets bigger every year, but it also felt like it was really a move to kind of say to Matt LaFleur, like, you need to get us over the hump sooner rather than later, because I believe Matt LaFleur's contract and Gutekunst's are coming up for extension possibilities or running out of time soon.
Yeah,
I mean,
all good points.
I look at the whole thing, and I look that this isn't, you said push the chips in, because these kind of moves, we've seen them in Seattle, right? When Seattle traded for Jimmy Graham and Percy Harvin, and they try and do these things to get these guys that can come in and tilt the field. Jamal Adams is another one. If they don't work out, they handcuff your team because you eat up so much cap space. And also those first round picks, those are like meaningful things that you want. So the Packers are, I mean, they're basically stating it's Super Bowl or bust. And the, coach and GM are going to be judged on that criteria. It's kind of a big deal for them. But honestly, other than the Eagles, the Packers have to be considered if it's not the Eagles, then it's the Packers as like the top team going into this. They've got the offensive weapons, they've got great defense, and now they've got the league's best pass rusher to fortify that defense. That team's going to be a force.
Well, they're certainly going to be in the conversation. There's no doubt about it. Okay, so let's move back into the Seahawks realm just for a second. I want to talk to you about the new rivalries uniform that's out. That's what everyone's talking about. I figured I'd just throw it out there. My first thought when I looked at it was, 2021 Oregon Ducks white home jerseys. It's not necessarily a bad thing. I actually kind of like them. I like the iridescent color changing helmet the best, to be completely honest. I think that's super cool. Keith, what do you think? Have you seen that yet?
I have. I'm cynical when it comes to this kind of stuff. It's like when they did the lime green, the electric green, or whatever the hell they called it. That was just painful to watch because it was so freaking ugly. they're just trying to sell jerseys and make money, and it's not
It's true.
anything other than that. It's like, ooh, we produce something new and people will go buy it because reasons. And I just don't care. I just don't. Like, give me
All right, give me somebody that's young, a little closer to 30 years old, to comment on this.
not me.
Bryce, what do you think?
I like them. I think I don't know if I'm a fan of the gray being the main predominant part of the jersey. I think they may have looked better if they had gone with a darker color and had kind of the green pop off somehow, like in the shoulder that way. It kind of, there's points of it where I look at it from a certain angle and I look at it and it kind of almost looks like the Philadelphia Eagles jersey to an extent, just like a muddier kind of version of that with the gray. And instead of the white that they have. Again, like I kind of agree with Keith to a point. Like they want to sell jerseys. What I want to see and what I've been basically banging the table for is for them to finally just redo the jersey as a whole, like their home and their away. Like they've had them for over a decade. And what I'd like to see them do is kind of take what they've had the last decade or so and the retro jersey colors and kind of mesh it together and make like a redone, modernized retro jersey as the home and away jersey. Because I still think, in my opinion, the retro jerseys are the best jerseys they have when they brought them back to wear them.
Absolutely.
Why not make that more of your staple? And then you can have, this this rivalry is your off-putting that's kind of this new hip looking thing. But I would rather see them put their money and their time into really going into, let's bring what we've had as a successful trend the last 10 years with these kind of newer ones that they've had and take the old color scheme and kind of mesh it together into one. That's what I'd like to see personally, Bill, is stop with these one-off jerseys and just redo the home and the away jerseys and bring that retro and new style together.
I think I could get on board with that. I think that makes the most sense. I think everyone loves those retro jerseys. And I don't mind the newer jersey, the one that we've had for the last 15, 20 years, like you said, but the combo of that's pretty intriguing to me. Yeah. Everyone will get to see this uniform combination in person if they're at the game and on TV on week 16, December 18th against the Los Angeles Rams at home. So that'll be something to see. Okay, so let's kind of get into this conversation about this division. In 2024, the Rams finished 10-7, won this thing by a 5-deep playoff kind of tiebreaker method. The Seahawks also finished 10-7, did not make the playoffs. 49ers at 6-11, Cardinals at 8-9. Let's talk about the general feeling that those that cover the league have about the Seahawks in this division, though, in 2025. This year, you have a full range of opinions, right? From Colin Coward picking the Seahawks to win the division and predicts that they will finish as the second best team in the NFC, to Rich Eisen comes on today on his show and picks the Seahawks to finish third in the division and the Rams to win the division and become the best team in the entire NFC, was his prediction. So that's the range. And everyone kind of falls in between, except for the vast majority of kind of NFL pundits, guys that cover the league outside of Seattle, have this team generally finishing third place, maybe making the playoffs, but just falling short. Some even say 8 wins is kind of the floor, but that's kind of where they expect them to be. It seems like this community, us, Bryce, yourself, all the other podcasters in this space really just don't, and guys that cover the team full time, just don't get that sense from this roster, this team, this moment in time in this division as we head into the regular season in 2025. I just kind of want to get your general thoughts. I'll start with you, Keith. How do you see this roster and how do you see it competing overall in this division and in the NFC broadly?
Well, I think the people that are predicting the Seahawks to finish fourth in the division with 6 wins or 5 wins clearly haven't paid attention at all, because this defense is straight up legit. They're going to be a top 5 defense, and you don't, have 6 wins total when you have a top 5 defense. It just doesn't happen. And I just think that basically those people that aren't paying attention, they go, oh well, they lost DK Metcalf and Geno and whatever, so they're going to be worse, and those, pick them to be bad. And that's like the end of the thought process. If you're paying attention and you're actually seeing what's going on, this is a far better team than that. You don't have a top 5 defense and lose a lot of games. And so all the offense has to do is to be average. And this is going to be a team that competes for this division.
So what do you say to the guys that put the betting lines down in Las Vegas? Usually don't like to be wrong, usually like to make money. Had this team originally at 7.5, and then moved it up recently to 8.5. They are betting that most people outside of Seattle are correct, and that we are on the wrong side of this equation.
Well, I mean, you look at that, and you have to remember that Vegas is in the business of making money. You're right; they're not in the business of being wrong, but they don't always have to be right to make money. They have to think about what the betting populace thinks and manipulate them. And so if they're picking, those numbers, they may be looking at, okay, we want people to pick the under because we think this team's going to be better. And so it's, where do you have to place that? But you don't want to put it too high, because then everyone makes money if they, hit the under. So if they think that the Seahawks are vastly underrated, they're going to rate them a little lower. They want people to pick the under, but they don't want to shoot themselves in the foot. And so it's more about manipulating the masses of the betting population than it is truly predicting wins and losses. And so it's hard to tell. It's hard to say what they're doing and what they're thinking and all of that. But I know within, I just don't see it. This was a 10-win team last year, and I think they're going to be better. A better football team. Whether that leads to more wins or not, I don't know. But it's a better football team.
Bryce?
When I look at the Vegas odds, and I look at, these national media analysts making these decisions, a lot of it is they're taking into value what Geno Smith did and what DK Metcalf meant to the Seattle Seahawks. And they figure because they're coming into a new situation that it's going to take them a year to get kind of, Sam Darnold and Cooper Kupp and those guys. It's going to take the new guys coming in a year to adjust or so to what's going on. Well, I could understand that if we're talking about guys that aren't, 4 or 5 years starting guys. We're talking about guys that are like 1 to 2 to 3 years in. Oh yeah, it's going to take them a little bit to adjust. They're still young players. We're talking about guys that have been around. Like Sam Darnold has had the hop the NFL circuit around, kind of start on the East Coast, go down to the South, get out to the West Coast, and back up to the Pacific Northwest. He's done a full outer loop of basically the United States. And you've seen that he's gotten better. And he's now playing another system he's familiar with. That's the other key thing here. This is not something where he's going to say if he come in last year when Ryan Grubb was here and it's a completely new offense to the NFL and everything, then yeah, I could understand it. But we're talking about a guy, and in Cooper Kupp as well, they understand this offense. So this offense isn't going to have such a steep learning curve as so many people think it's going to have. And, the other side of it for me is to Keith's point, the defense. You're returning the entire defense minus Rayshon Jenkins, I think, and our 2 linebackers, obviously, that started and got cut halfway through the year last year. You're returning most of your entire starting defense from last season that all know the scheme better. You've added other pieces of DeMarcus Lawrence to this. You've added a Nick Eamon-Worry to this that, is going to change a lot of what Mike McDonald does, I think, in a lot of ways. And everyone else is comfortable in their spots. I don't understand this. Oh, they're a 7.5 win team. And when I look at it, I think, and I've said this on my show, like I'm really bullish on this team and I'm seeing them in person and so on, that I think 13 wins is not an outlandish take for the Seahawks. A lot of people think I'm crazy with that, but the way this schedule is shaping up, and you look at, the Rams and the 49ers, like the 49ers are basically a walking infirmary right now with all their injuries. And the Rams are one bad hit away from old man Stafford's back collapsing. He's going to be walking around with a cane pretty soon to try and move. So if those are what are standing in front of us in the division, and the Cardinals are the Cardinals, I like Seattle's chances being the younger, hungrier team right now.
Yeah, agreed on all that stuff. Okay, so let's get into this a little bit, but I want to start with a quote from Mike McDonald, and I know that he's not going to be watching this show because he said this. Coach was asked, how do you feel about your Seahawks and how they stack up to your rivals in the NFC West? And he answered, bro, I really don't care. So just kind of want to lay that out there. And I don't blame him. Like I love that. I love that idea. Okay, let's start with the lowest finisher in the division last year, the 49ers. You just mentioned them. They're a walking in infirmary. I will say this though about this team, that they have been resilient in the past. They are healthy-ish right now. They have some holes on the roster because of some injuries and some players missing, especially the wide receiver rooms is kind of decimated right now. But they do have one of the easiest schedules in 2025 that I have ever seen a team have. Like, it's like a pretty, outside of the NFC West games, it's pretty much like gimme games. And so they do have an opportunity to win some games if they don't have injuries. And it'll be interesting to see, but they lost a bunch of people in the offseason. I mean, Deebo Samuel traded to the Commanders. Dre Greenlaw's no longer there. Shavarius Ward, Hufanga signed with the Broncos. Hargrave's gone. Malik Collins released and signed with the Cleveland Browns. Kyle Juszczyk was released as part of some salary cap management. Leonard Floyd's no longer there. They paid Brock Purdy. And then in the draft, they kind of went heavy on defense and defensive lines. They've got some youth, but it's unproven guys up front with Bosa there. So I really kind of wanted to find out, number one, how that Brock Purdy contract really affected the way that they decided to build this roster, have the roster construction done this season, and how it might affect them for years now to come. They're paying him, I think, $265 million contract extension, $181 million in guarantees, and about 19% of the total salary cap goes to Brock Purdy. Is a Brock Purdy level quarterback, a guy that can get you all the way to the Super Bowl. He's gotten as far as the NFC championship game, but can he get you all the way with a diminished roster around him? Bryce?
I think the key thing here when you look at Brock Purdy is he has to have pieces around him. And so they're now going to have to try and figure out how to do that through the draft in a lot of ways. Like, he did get them to a Super Bowl, and they ended up losing it, but they had a very good roster at that time that took them to a Super Bowl. I look at Brock Purdy in the same kind of light, and some 49er fans, if they do watch this, may hate me for this. He's like an upgraded version of Jimmy Garoppolo. Like, I don't look at Brock Purdy and go, he is this top 5 NFL quarterback that's a game changer that I can look at and go, yeah, you know what? Brock Purdy on his own can win me 5+ games on my NFL schedule on his own with the team not doing well around him. Like, I don't see it. And so when I'm not capable of saying that about a quarterback, I see him more in the light of, yeah, you need pieces around you. Like, you need weapons to work around you. Like, you're banking on Trent Williams staying healthy for a whole year again, who's definitely had his injury problems. You're talking about CMC being healthy. And I know they just went and traded for Robinson, but he hasn't exactly been a stability kind of running back for anybody. And even in Washington, when you're getting traded out of Washington right now for Austin Eckler, who's an older guy, it's not exactly a great thing for your career. So when I look at this in the Brock Purdy discussion, I go, yes, he is a good quarterback. I'd say he's probably, in my opinion, anywhere between QB3 and QB2 in this division. But I don't look at him and I don't get fear when I ever watched, and when we watched the 49ers come in and play Seattle, I've never feared the quarterback position. There was one time, and that was when Colin Kaepernick was there, because of the ability he had with his legs to cause our defense some problems when plays broke down. But Jimmy Garoppolo never scared me. Trey Lance obviously never scared me. And Brock Purdy's never really scared me. So, like, I don't look at their quarterback thing and Brock Purdy is the reason. I think in some respects it may be a detriment to the 49ers. They gave him such a large contract with needing other pieces around him for him to be an elite level quarterback.
Yeah. I mean, there's something to be said there. I think I'm a little higher on Brock Purdy than some people in the Seattle market. I think that he's athletically, he's nothing special. He doesn't have a great arm. He's not fast. But he makes a lot of smart decisions and he doesn't do stupid things. And we've seen that be enough to win Super Bowls. But you're right. Is he going to go win you a game that you absolutely do not deserve to win? No. Russ did that for Seattle a couple of times, where the Seahawks had no business winning a game, but they got the dub because of Russell Wilson. And Brock Purdy's never going to do that. But I think he's never going to lose you a game because he's smart with the football. And so it's one of those things where he needs a defense and he needs a few weapons. He needs a guy like Deebo Samuel. Deebo Samuel Christian McCaffrey made him look really good. And now Samuel's gone and McCaffrey's there, but he's much older and just coming off yet another injury year. Like all of the ones he had before San Francisco. I don't know if you can count on him at all. And they just don't have wide receivers on that team to help Brock Purdy out. I just don't see it. I know that when Vegas first released the game odds, they were favored in 15 of 17 games, which is absurd to me because this was a team that won 7 games last year and then hemorrhaged talent throughout the offseason. They are not better than they were last year. They are worse. And I just don't get it. I don't get how they can be favored in 15 games.
Yeah. Well, I mean, their schedule is really easy, but I can see them being favored in like 10 games. They have a decent offense. I mean, they finished 9th in DVOA on offense last year with injuries. I'm not going to take too much away from their offense. I think it's capable. I think it really does depend on Trent Williams staying healthy. It depends on Brock Purdy staying healthy because after Brock Purdy, they have Mac Jones and then Christian McCaffrey, obviously. If he goes down, especially early in the season, it's like they don't have the ability to make up. They're definitely a team that's descending for me. I think, if you take a look, if you're honest in the division, I think the two teams that are ascending are definitely the Cardinals and the Seahawks, while the Rams are struggling with the same sort of issues I think that the 49ers struggled with last year. They've got a really much older quarterback and so forth. Let's get into the Rams a little bit. I just kind of want to talk about this team in that I want to skip the Seahawks because I want to save them for a little later. So I want to just kind of get into the Rams and talk about a team that finished first in this division.
You also skipped Arizona, but they're kind of, I know, they're easy to remember.
I'm going to get to Arizona. But I really want to talk about the Rams because I think everyone feels like if it's not going to be the 49ers, it's going to be the Rams. And while I will give the Rams the idea that they could compete, I think, with Seattle's defensive line to be the best defensive line, not only in the division, but one of the best in the NFC. I really like their front on the defensive side. To me, it's a top 5 unit in the NFL as a pass rushing unit. Now, as a run stopping unit, not so much. I think they're kind of a bottom. At least they were last year, a bottom 5 defending the run kind of team. But they did have some additions in the offseason. I like the roster except for Stafford. He's got the back thing. He barely practiced in the in training camp. Didn't play in preseason. But nonetheless, that trio, the Devontae Adams coming in along with Nakua, with Stafford throwing him the ball, that's dangerous. Like when they're healthy, that's going to be tough to stop. And Devontae Adams is one of the best over-the-top receivers in the NFL. I think he finished, top 15 as far as yards per attempt with him being the target. So what are your thoughts on the defense first, Bryce? And then Keith, what are your thoughts on the offense?
This defense to me is probably the only one in the division that can actually rival what Seattle's putting together. And I think they're quite good. Jared Verse, we saw, I think he's going to take a step forward. We all have to remember, though, they did get a very key Seahawk legend on their defensive line this offseason in Puna Ford. He's going to make such a difference on the interior of that D-line with Braden Fisk and run stop. And in all seriousness, I think he will. I think having him in there with Braden Fisk is going to cause problems for teams trying to run in between the tackles. And it's going to allow for, I think, Verse to have, more potential one-on-one opportunities if Fisk can create more of a push in the middle. The one thing that shocked me last year, I think, about the Rams was how good their defensive backfield was. And I think it was extremely underrated. Like, you look at what, everyone wants to talk about the Minnesota playoff game where Sam Darnold looked horrible in that game and it completely tanked his value in some respects this offseason. If you go back and watch the All-22, the coverage from the back end of the Rams in that game was phenomenal. Like, you had guys like Akella Witherspoon, ex-Seahawk, locking up Justin Jefferson at points. And, they had other guys out there taking away Addison. Like, there was nowhere in some respects for Sam Darnold to throw the ball. People kept saying, why is he holding it so long? No one was open. And so I think the key for the Rams this year is try and take as much pressure off Stafford and that offense by just this defense playing lights out, creating turnovers, pressuring teams, doing those type of things, and make it so that if Stafford has a bad day or two, they can sit back and go, yeah, but our defense has got us. They're going to take care of it.
Yeah, I would agree with that. The defense they were super young last year. So they started out just historically awful, like legitimately, like the first few games, they were one of the worst defenses in NFL history. But once that youth kind of like figured it out, they were really tough down the stretch. And on the offensive side, like this is a team that's just got weapons. Yeah, they couldn't keep Cooper Kupp. He came to Seattle, but they went and got Devontae Adams to replace that. This is a team that's kind of loaded in terms of offensive weapons. I can see why pundits like them. They should. It's a talented roster, but you're right. So much of it depends on, does Matt Stafford's 37-year-old back have a full 17 games in him? I don't know, because their backup is Jimmy Garoppolo, and that's not going to scare anybody. And I mean, you can have a far worse backup than Jimmy Garoppolo, but still, like, he's not a guy that's going to win you a bunch of games. And so this is a team that they're old in places, and you just have to wonder how long it's going to stay together. But overall, I mean, you look at it, I like their talent on both sides of the ball. They're a tough team.
I like their talent more on defense, actually. It's just younger talent. The defensive line is legit. I think in addition to Stafford on the offense, their offensive line has question marks for me. Arlek Jackson has been injured, their left tackle, and the remaining guys are aging. Steve Avila missed 7 games last year. Rob Havestein missed time last year. And when pressured, Matthew Stafford just isn't that good. He's not that effective. He's a bottom 5 in the NFL under pressure, statistically. And also he's susceptible to injury. So those guys, if those guys miss time, they could be relying on some backups that nobody's even heard of before. And this could be a long season for them. I mean, it's really that precarious for me. I don't see them as being a double-digit win team. Like, to me, they're very fringy. I think that they're at best the same that they were last year, net. And I'm not seeing it. I'm not seeing them finishing first. I've seen some people say they're going to finish first. They think Stafford's the best quarterback in the division. When healthy, yes, he is. But I just don't think it's going to all come together. All right, I'm going to give you guys the choice.
Line, I would say with the offensive line, they did sign Coleman Shelton from the Bears and DJ Humphries from the Chiefs to come in and stabilize that offensive line. So I think that there's reason for them to think that they're going to be okay up front. But yeah, I mean, and Kessenberry, the right tackle from the Vikings. There's there's reason for them to think that they're going to be better there than they were a year ago. But there's a lot of old players on that team. There really are. And they're depending on old players staying healthy, which is not usually a good bet in the NFL.
So I was going to give you guys a choice, whether or not you want to talk about the Seahawks or the Cardinals next. I feel like the Seahawks portion of that is going to be a longer conversation. So I was thinking maybe we'd get through the Cardinals quickly, but I'll leave it up to you guys. What do you think?
Let's get through the Cardinals and their ketchup mustard style looking jerseys they just released.
All right, let's do that. Okay. So for me, this team is beyond the Seahawks. I think this team is the most interesting team in the NFC West for me, because I really like Austin Fort, their general manager, and what he's been able to do the last 3 seasons on really getting rid of a really bad roster and completely starting over and rebuilding this thing from scratch in a way that kind of mirrors what Seattle is doing, is getting younger, really having successful drafts, consistently being very selective in free agency, but also having money to spend, and then kind of building this thing over a few seasons, and then having a coach in Gannon that can kind of put it all together for them. So I really like what they're doing and general manager side. And I think that they're now in a position with their roster where they've got some capabilities, to me, both on offense and defense, where they actually have NFL level players, like starting at least 80% of the roster, which is a big move for them. Now, for me, that's all fine and dandy, but Kyler Murray is still running the show. Now, we've talked for years, Keith, about Kyler Murray and not really believing in him and thinking he was a little immature and would never really lead them. And then he had that ACL, and I'd mentioned on the show, I think it was last year or the year before, he had that ACL, and I live here down in the desert because I kind of see this a little bit more up close than some. And just his work ethic, and he was in the building all the time, and that team started to really rally around him and believe in him. And the coaching staff kind of gave him really another shot, because I think that he was sketch on whether or not he was even going to get that starting spot back. But the way that he responded after that was kind of eye-opening for a lot of players and a lot of people around the organization. And they kind of all went back in on him. But last year it was kind of the same thing. You saw 5 games where he had an EPA per drop back of 0.24 that was on the level of Josh Allen level play. He also had 5 games where he had an EPA per drop back of negative 0.15 or worse. That's Daniel Jones level of play. So to me, that's the key for this entire team. And it's always, people have always kind of gotten on that bandwagon, the Kyler Murray bandwagon, and have always been let down and disappointed. Is this year any different, Bryce?
I don't think so. I think Kyler is who he is, and I think we've seen that. You kind of look at that with players, and the thing with Kyler, and why for me, I still have so many questions about whether or not he's the long-term reset quarterback there after they gave him that deal, is you look at kind of the way they pivoted their offense to more of a West Coast style, run the ball, and the throws he's being asked to make. Like Kyler's big thing when he was successful early in his career, and to the exciting factor of Kyler, were the throws kind of like we got accustomed to Russ, which were the deep outside the numbers, down the sidelines kind of throws. And Kyler struggles exactly the same way Russ did to throw those in breakers, those ones in between the hashes and the numbers. And then they go out and draft Marvin Harrison Jr. Well, Marvin Harrison Jr. isn't exactly an outside the numbers vertical threat. Like he can do it, but where he made a lot of his, money in college and stuff and got his draft stock was running those deep in cuts and those things where he could come and sit in the middle. And Kyler's never been good at hitting those. And you look at what they want to do. They want to run the ball. They want to do play action. They want to throw the ball into that area. Well, the problem is Kyler can't see in that area. I hate to break it to everybody, but he can. And you look at what Ernest Jones did to him last year. Mike McDonald knew that was an issue and took advantage of it and dropped him right into the one spot Kyler's never going to see, the middle of the field. Kyler just threw it there because he assumed it was going to be there, and then it got picked. I don't look at this Cardinals team like they've got some nice pieces. Will Johnson, I think, was a really good pickup for them, and I think can really help them on the defensive side. We won't know with Walter Nolan due to his obviously injury and him being on the PUP list or NFI list. To me, this team is still polarizing, and it will go as far as Kyler can go before the wheels kind of fall off the tricycle with Kyler Murray.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree with that on Kyler. I think he showed some leadership when he came back from that ACL. I really didn't think that they would play him at all because they have so much money just riding on him that they would, just let him get healthy and all of that and then see if they can cut him or whatever. I thought they were ready to move on, but he kind of held his job and came back, showed some leadership, and I was like, all right, so maybe this kid's finally growing up. But you're right about him not seeing the middle of the field. And honestly, I think between him and Russ, you can see what the weakness is of having that short quarterback. It's the middle of the field. It's hard for them to see it, and they don't do it well. And just like, Russ ultimately was really good, but limited because he couldn't use the middle of the field. And, Kyler's going to have that same problem, or he has that same problem. And so it's going to limit what they do with that. And so eventually they are going to need to move on. I mean, it just is what it is. But you look at within the rest of everything else they did, just in free agency, they lost 3 of their interior defensive linemen that played significant snaps in their rotation. And the only player that they signed to replace them is a 39-year-old Calais Campbell.
Who did finish first among defensive tackles in run stop rate, though. I will say that.
True, but he's also 39. He's going to turn 40
That's
during
true.
the season. This is his year 40 season. You lose 3 important guys that are part of your rotation, and your only replacement, at least veteran.
Well, you did bring in Dalvin Tomlinson too, which I think is a good ad, Keith, and I think they did bring in Josh Sweat, which had a 19.
Josh Sweat but he's an edge. I was just talking about the front.
Yeah, sure.
3. So I like Josh Sweat.
And Darius Robinson was injured last year early and missed the season, and he's back, and apparently he's had a great camp with them. So I don't want to completely discount them up front, but I'm not here to rescue them either. I do think that Will Johnson's a good ad. Obviously Buda Baker's one of the best, but he's usually been on an island back there and comes up and makes tackles at a really good rate. I really like him as a player. Garrett Williams, I think, is a little underrated as far as being a nickel guy. So they're, I think they have potential on defense to kind of step up this year and be a little something. And then on offense, if Kyler Murray's, in sync and they've got that thing under control, I think they can do well and do enough. Now, they did win 8 games last year. I mean, this is a team that's kind of moving up overall. I think they were 3 wins the year before, 8 wins with an ascending roster. Say what you want about Kyler. Everything else around him, though, is pretty good. And I see them potentially breaking through to double-digit wins this year.
I don't know.
And really kind of supplanting the 49ers and potentially the Rams as being the second best team in this division. Even if it's a flawed team, I still think that maybe they're a second best team in the division, 10-win potential kind of a team.
How are you going to account for the fact that they were out in front of the division by a couple of games and then fell on their face in the second half of the season, which is what they do every
Well, you can say that for about the
year.
last five or 6 years. Right?
More than that.
Right.
Every
they do.
single
It's true.
year. They until they figure that out, because this is over 2 coaching staffs now where they get out to hot starts and then they fall on their face and they just can't maintain it. Until they figure that out, I have a hard time taking the team seriously. I honestly do.
Yeah. So let's have some fun with this Seahawks portion of this conversation. We're about 45 minutes into this thing. I didn't even ask Bryce how long he could stay on here. So maybe we need to wrap this thing up really quick, or maybe you can stick around.
I'm good. Keep going.
Okay. So let's talk Seahawks. Keith, why don't you lay out the offseason a little bit and tell me why this team is a better team than the 10-win team we had last year? Or maybe it's not as good. What's your opinion of where we're at?
Well, I look at what happened with the Seahawks. They lost Tyler Lockett, DK Metcalf, and Geno Smith. I mean, that in the end is the what a lot of people are looking at and being like, okay, that's the loss in talent, and how do you overcome losing your best receiver, your second best receiver, and your starting quarterback? Except for that, people I think they seem to gloss over the fact that Geno Smith did not play good football last year. He honestly did not. He was not. He was second in the league in interceptions. He didn't play well, and so having him be a guy that goes, it's not the loss that people think that it is. DK Metcalf is a very difficult player to replace, but Tyler Lockett, even as the team has increased how much they've thrown the football over the last 3 years, his production has decreased every year for the last 3 years. It isn't quite the same. Yes, if they'd lost him a few years ago, that would have been like deadly. But he is a guy that, he regressed to a point where he was fairly, replaceable. As hard it is to say that, because I freaking love Tyler Lockett. He's one of my favorite Seahawks of all time. But he just wasn't that guy anymore. And so basically 2 of those guys weren't that good last year. And so can they replace that? Sure. I like what they've done in terms of bringing back the entire starting defense from the last 8 games where they were a top 5 defense. And then you have they added, Nick and Amari and DeMarcus Lawrence to an already really stacked defense. And on offense, it was more about becoming more solid and less dependent on 1 or 2 guys. So they improved the offensive line. They got Sam Darnold to spread the ball around. They replaced Metcalf with a combination of Cooper Kupp and Torrey Horton. These are good things. Like this is how you build a winner. You have a top 5 defense, and if you have an average offense, you're gonna win a lot of games. And I think of all the moves, all the things that they've done, all the changes that they've made, the biggest deal out of all of them isn't on the field, it's on the sidelines. They jettisoned one of the most just incompetent offensive coaching staffs that we've ever seen, and brought in guys that are experienced. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for years. I mean, you're talking 30 years of experience by their offensive line coach in the NFL versus 0, which is what they had last year. A offensive coordinator who's called plays on 3 different teams, knows what he's doing, always has a good running game, versus someone who didn't know what play action was. And that's going to make a huge difference regardless of the talent that's on the field.
Nice setup. Bryce, your thoughts?
So I'm going to push back a little bit on Keith on the Geno Smith thing, just a little bit. And I was one of Geno's harshest critics. I have been. Given what you just said there, Keith, towards the end about the offensive coaching staff last year and how basically incompetent they were, and they didn't know what play action was, and we couldn't run the ball. The interceptions, I will say this, Geno had more critical interceptions than he probably did the first 2 years, especially that Rams first home game. But given the amount of times he was asked to straight drop back and there were no checkdowns built into the offense and everything was a vertical, for a guy that's not what you should be asking of. And we knew that when we basically went through the Shane Waldron experiment and, went through that whole thing there with him and the offensive staff there. It works when he's in a system that you have a run game. You can get the ball out of his hand quick. And some of the things Ryan Grubb asked him to do last year, a lot of the things Ryan Grubb asked him to do last year, it looked good on paper. It looked good when you have the number one offensive line in college football and 3 NFL draft picks at receiver and a top 10 NFL draftable quarterback in Michael Penix. But then coming to the situation you are where you've got DK Metcalf, and I get the DK Metcalf's not an easy player to replace built on his physicality, but we're talking about one of the guys that had one of the worst jump ball or 50-50 contested ball catch ratios in the NFL for a guy his size. And, that's where you saw JSN start to take over. Like, I don't look at the Geno part of this and go, he was a big reason in their failure last year in some aspects. I really look at the misguidedness of this offensive coaching staff and what they were asking this group of individuals to do. I completely agree with you on Tyler. I called him Tyler Roll Around Lockett because every time he caught the ball, Tyler would hit the ground and roll. That's kind of where I look at some of the deficiency last year, and where, to your point about this new coaching staff, I'm super excited for what I've seen out at the field with Clint Kubiak and John Benton and Rick Dennison. Like, just the way the offensive practices are structured now, as when I saw them last year, it's completely different. This is what we're doing. We're going to run the ball, and you're going to know we're going to run the ball, but you can't stop us from running the ball kind of mentality. And I agree that the pieces they brought in, the Sam Darnold, the Cooper Kupp, the DeMarcus Lawrence, especially with Kupp and Darnold, you're bringing guys that have lunch pail mentalities rather than, I would say, guys like Geno and DK that were a little bit more bullish on their personalities, as we saw through post-game interviews and things on Twitter with Geno going after fans and stuff. And as we even saw to a point, Geno's reaction when he came back to Seattle and the one fan put up the really stupid sign that was an arrogant sign, and Geno's response to it. I look at it this way. This team, where they're going, I think they made the right additions. I don't know if necessarily that we'll see the full effect of these come until we're in a tight game, and a game that maybe we aren't playing well enough to win, but you see a guy like a Cooper Kupp or that make that crucial play that maybe we didn't make last year, and we make it this year now because you have those type of guys that have had that level of success. I think Sam Darnold and Geno Smith, and I've said this for a while, though, is still a trade-off. It's you're getting 10 years younger with a quarterback that I think still has more upside in the long run, but I wouldn't necessarily look at it and go, Geno was horrible last year or awful. Like some people have said, like there are some people that went one side on the bell curve versus the other. He's either God's gift to playing quarterback in some Seattle people's minds, and then in other people's minds, he's the worst thing ever. I kind of stood in the middle with Geno, and I did for a long time, where it's like, yeah, he can do some really nice things. He throws a really pretty ball when he's on. But last year's offense, I think, really handicapped him and put him in a horrible spot to succeed.
So I want to I agree with all of that, and I didn't want to say that the offensive struggles were Geno's problem. It was more of you're replacing production. Can you replace 20 touchdowns and 15 interceptions? Yeah, you can replace that easily. That's not a difficult thing to replace.
No.
Now, put him in a competent offense, he's going to give you more than that. We saw that even with Shane Waldron, who wasn't a good offensive coordinator. You saw much better production out of Geno Smith than you did out of the absolute nonsense that the Seahawks tried to run last year. So I wasn't trying to put the blame onto him, but I'm just saying, like, from a production standpoint.
Oh, I agree with you on that. Yes, 100%.
Sam Darnold is totally capable of improving on the production that we got out of Geno Smith last year.
Agreed.
So what I'm hearing you guys say is really some of this season kind of hinges on this offense and this offensive cohesion that we talk about, this complementary football that Mike McDonald's alluding to with the defense and so forth, running the ball successfully, play action, pass, taking the time of possession and having control of that for your offense. In addition, like if you go back and look at Clint Kubiak with the Saints, No team in the NFL in 2024 played as many offensive snaps against base defenses than the New Orleans Saints did. Number one in the NFL. What does that tell you? It tells me that defenses didn't really know how to align against that offense because they ran a lot of the things out of the same formations and so forth. I think we can look forward to that. That helps the offensive line. It's like last year, teams were able to tee off on us. That offensive line had no chance. They were inexperienced. We were dealing with some injuries to Abe Lucas and so forth for half the season. A lot of rookies were getting a lot of playing time that they probably shouldn't have had. And it was doing no favors to Geno Smith during that time. So talk to me a little bit, Bryce, about offensive cohesion, what that means to you, what that means to this offense, what we can expect to see, and why you would be bullish, as you say, about, obviously the defense, but when you combine it with a competent offense, what do you expect out of that combination?
So the offensive like cohesion, sequencing, synergy, all that stuff, it comes down to how you structure your play and your play sheet. And last year, like just watching the way the Seahawks games were called and going back and seeing the sequencing of plays, like, everyone looks at like, the old shoddy thing of run, pass, run, pass. The problem for Seattle was there was none of that. It was like a Rolodex. It's like, you sit there and you kind of flip through it. Oh, I like that player. Oh, I like that play. And I never felt like anything Seattle did with their run game when they did run meshed at all with what they wanted to do in their pass game. It was like, oh, I really like this play because I designed it a certain way and I want to call this play is kind of how it felt. And so when you go back and you look at what Clint Kubiak's done, in New Orleans, you look at what he did in Minnesota. And even for me, like when they hired Clint Kubiak, I really went and studied all the way back to Bill Walsh and when Mike Holmgren was his offensive coordinator and going through that process and seeing how that changed to Mike Shanahan and Gary Kubiak in 94 in San Francisco. And then when they dispersed and went off to Denver. And the thing is, and you saw it in the preseason to a point, especially that first drive that Sam came in and they did against Kansas City, was they ran a similar looking formation 2 different times with the same motion, but it had 3 different results out of the play. We gashed him for an inside run. Then we ran a toss out of it and gashed him up the field for 7 yards. And then they come back and they play action off of it. And JSN's doing the same orbit motion. And he goes back out the other side and they flip it out to him. And we get 5 or 6 yards that way. And so what it does is it allows the offense to dictate terms to a way to a defense being like, we have an answer for what you're going to do, but you don't know what we are going to do because we're going to come out in a certain personnel look and we're going to do a certain thing a certain way. And you're going to think you're going to get some cue off of it, but really we're setting you up for this. And that's where Seattle didn't have that last year. Last year was like, we hope we can get something going on offense and can sustain drives. And the thing is, when you run the ball like they're going to, and what we've seen in the preseason is it forces it, especially when you execute it out and you score. And that's going to be the big key thing with this offense is getting leads and sustaining drives and getting points out of those, is you now force that other team, as we saw back with the LOB, you put a team, when you start scoring on them and chewing the clock with running the ball and not turning it over, that other team gets desperate because every time they get the ball, they're either down or they're getting pressured, and allows your defense to play faster and go after them. And that's something we've heard from Mike McDonald this offseason is, I want to bring more pressure. I want to do a lot more things. Well, you can't do that when you don't trust that your offense is going to stay on the field, because you're going to get put in, situations where you're not able to do those because you're defending a shorter field than you expected. And so that's where the synergy of this offense is. This offense can do what it's been doing in the preseason. I don't think it'll do it to the same tick right off the bat in the regular season, but at least be, to Keith's point, an average NFL offense, have an average NFL offensive line, be between 17 and 14 when it comes to offensive production with a top 5 defense or top 10 NFL defense. You will win football games because you will control the clock and limit that other team's ability to score. And that's the biggest factor. Getting into shootouts doesn't help a defense. Sure, it looks nice. Us as fans go all crazy. Oh, it's 45, 42. Like, what a game. For me, I'd rather see 24-17 and it come down to the team with the ball at the end's last possession to go down the field and score, because that to me is what we're trying to play in. We're trying to play in those type of games. We love blowouts. They're great. But for this team to work, this defense cannot be on the field in a high octane situation where they're constantly having to defend a short field or quick transitions because the offense goes 3 and out and they're off the field. And we saw that way too much last year for this team.
Yeah, way too much. No,
So let's talk.
that the way I would say the way you put that is great. I would say that to go back to what you were saying, Bill, about how New Orleans faced more base defenses. You got to remember that they ran the ball a lot. Teams knew they were going to run it, and then they had to, Carr got hurt, and they run freaking Spencer Rattler out there at quarterback, who's scaring nobody. And so
He's
teams
starting
were
this year, by the way.
good for him. He's scaring nobody. Teams were loading the box because they knew New Orleans is either going to run the ball or they're not going anywhere, and they still ran the ball effectively because that's what the scheme does. It really works in a way that allows you to kind of just plug and play backs and make things work. We saw that in Denver when his dad was the offensive coordinator and coach there, and we saw it in Houston when his dad went there, and we've seen it, now that Kubiak is he's on his third team where he's an offensive coordinator. That system, it generates run plays, it generates running yards effectively, and teams can load the box to stop it, but they're still going to get the yards. And so then it's just a matter of if you can convert third down, you're going to have a lot of long drives, and that's really what it comes down to.
So a few days ago, Cal Capadia came out and said that he expects the Seahawks to be the number one defense in the entire NFL this year. Last year, they finished top 10 by a lot of different metrics, including just being a bad defense overall in the first 6 or 8 games. And keep in mind too that the defense in 2024 did that against the number one overall toughest offensive schedule. And they're not going to face that this year. They had the 6th best pressure rate in the NFL, even though they finished, I think, top 10 in sacks, but almost top 5 in pressure rate. I think that the thing that makes me really hopeful, especially as we have this conversation about the NFC West, is that in our own division, in 3 consecutive weeks, the Seahawks held the Rams to 13 points in regulation, held the 49ers to 17 points, shut down Kyler Murray in Arizona, and held them to 3 points. Mike McDonald is like the neutralizer in this division, and we haven't had that for so long. It was just refreshing to have a competent defensive play caller in this division for this team, and I'm really excited about the additions. Keith, you'd mentioned the Emanwari signing. We haven't even really seen the potential of that yet, right? We're still like waiting for that to emerge. We haven't seen DeMarcus Lawrence in this defense yet. Certainly, some glimpses in practice of what he can do and how he can affect that defensive line. Keith, what do you think this defense is going to bring in 2025 to allow it to compete and potentially win this division?
Well, I mean, they made structural changes as far as, roster things mid-season last year. They brought in Kobe Bryant to be a starting safety, and they 2 new middle linebackers and some of that. They got some guys healthy up front, but ultimately some of it was just about the schemes, like guys starting to really get what Mike McDonald wanted to do and playing fast and thinking less. And you're coming in with all 11 starters and a bunch of key rotation pieces back. So there's not going to be this ramp up of waiting, for guys to where it becomes second nature and they can just play fast and stop thinking. You've got that. And then you add in just high-end talent with guys like Emanwari and Lawrence in order to make your different packages better and more talented. It's hard to look at what they're doing now and not expect top 5 defense all year minimum. Shields saying the Seahawks are going to be number 1. I would love that, even if they're top 2, top 3. They're in that discussion. Like we're going to be that's going to be a fun year because they're that good. I don't know if the depth is going to allow them to maintain that all year, but that's my own concern. But the talent, at least at the beginning of the year, is there and is in place and was in place last year. So it's not like there's no learning curve. I just think we're going to see a special defensive season.
Bryce, how do you feel about the defense, and how do you think the offense is going to be able to help them?
I think the offense helps them by time of possession. That's the thing I'll keep harboring home. Run the ball, maintain it, and finish drives. That's one thing that's kind of bit the Seahawks in the butt the last few years is their inability, like especially on opening drives. When was the last time we saw an opening drive touchdown from the Seattle Seahawks where we went, hey, that's the way to start the game. We took the ball, went down the field, and scored. Play with, allow this defense. Yeah, I was going to say, allow this defense to play with a bit of a lead. That's another thing I think that'll help because you have so many weapons in Emanwari, Witherspoon, the safeties, Love and Bryant, who I think kind of get forgotten about to an extent now because of the draft pick of Emanwari at safety. You got the linebackers in Ernest Jones and Tyrese Knight. I like the guys that they've even brought in through this roster period now. And the biggest thing for me on defense, and I think this is the one person that's kind of gotten forgot about by some Seahawk fans, or they're not talking about him enough, in my opinion, is Byron Murphy. I need to see him take a step this year. He needs to be collapsing the interior of offense's pockets when it comes to passing situations. And I hope for the sake of it that Jaron Reed eats up more of those nose tackle snaps and they really unleash Byron on third down passing situations and let him go. Like if he has to play nose tackle on 3rd and +7, I'm okay with that if he's flanked by Leo and DeMarcus Lawrence and we got Chenna or Boy Mafe and Derek Hall coming off the edge and you got, Emanwari in there and coming off the edge as well as, kind of that type of package. Like what we used to remember as the NASCAR package when you had Cliff Averill and Michael Bennett and Clint McDonald out there. It made some things difficult for defenses. I expect this defense to play fast right out of the gate. I don't expect it to be a learning curve like we saw last year. And if there is one and they start slow, I think that's very, very concerning because of how many guys you are returning to the Seahawks defense. They should come out and, given the situation the 49ers are in week 1 against us, we should come out and be able to punch the 49ers in the mouth and dominate that game from the start. But if it happens the other way around, I think there's going to be more questions that need to be asked of what is going on that's making that the situation for the Seahawks on defense.
I would agree with that. I mean, you look at the 49ers are a great week 1 opponent for Seattle because offensively, they're just injured. They're a mess. And you're going to be able to, come in, and if there's any growing pains whatsoever, you shouldn't notice them because, there's just a talent deficit there for San Francisco. It's a good game for them. It's not like, going in and playing Buffalo or one of those or Kansas City, one of those teams that their offense is in great shape and it's going to challenge any defense. I mean, San Francisco has some of that talent, but who's playing wide receiver for them? Who's starting? Sky Moore, a guy they just traded for with a 2027 7th round pick, and it looks like he may be getting the start. So, yeah, that's they better start fast. They really should.
So I wasn't going to ask for any predictions. I think I'm going to ask for some predictions. So we don't have to do all the regular season right now, but I just want that first game. Like you guys kind of alluded to it, what you expect for that 49ers game, but let's put it on the line here. What do you expect during that first game? What do you think our offense is going to be able to do against that defense? And what's the score? How does that game turn out?
So for me, I think the score in that game is, I'll go with the score first. I'll go 34-13 Seattle.
Wow.
And my bold prediction in this game and how I think it's going to go is I think Seattle will rush for over 200 yards.
Damn.
So that Kansas City game was not a fluke in the preseason.
I don't think it is. No. And I think with the amount of young guys they have on that defensive line in San Francisco, they have a lot of rookies that they're asking to learn and play fast against. Yeah, I get a younger offensive line in Seattle, but what Seattle's asking scheme-wise compared to what Robert Saleh asks, I think, on that defensive front, Seattle's going to be able to take advantage of that. And I think you're going to see K9 and Charbonnet both potentially, get close to the upper, 90s. Maybe one of them goes over 100. And the other thing I'll say is I think one of Seattle's tight ends will have 2 touchdowns.
Wow.
Yeah.
Nice. I love that.
That's a bold prediction. I think that if Seattle's defense does what I think it's going to do, which is just basically put their foot on San Francisco's neck and not let them get up, the offense doesn't have to do much. And you're going to see them running the ball. And if they don't have that 200-yard rushing game, then they're not going to put up a lot of points. But the game's never going to feel out of control. And it's going to be something like 23-16 for Seattle. And it'll feel like, yeah, that game was close. It's within a touchdown, but it never really felt that close. Is kind of what I expect. Seattle's just going to be running the ball and being okay with taking field goals because they know San Francisco can't score.
So I'm going to talk a little bit about what you guys both just alluded to, which is the idea that this offense is going to be supercharged, not necessarily supercharged in your case, Keith, but competent and in control. And you, Bryce, had mentioned the idea that maybe the game against Kansas City wasn't a fluke, and they're going to go out and prove it in their first game of the regular season, which if that happens, what does that mean for this season? If we come out and stomp on the 49ers and really show that we are going to take control of this division from game one, what does that say, Bryce?
I don't know if game one, even if that ends up being the case, I don't know if that really, for me at least, will change how I view the Seahawks team I think that they're going to be this year. What I'll make the statement is I think it means that Seattle's finally tired of being the picked on kid in the division by the Rams and the Niners, where we're kind of coming back to be the bully. And I also think it'll speak to Mike McDonald finally getting the team he wants. He wants a team that's physical, that can punch other teams in the mouth and not back down. He's said for a while he wants to dictate terms. If they come out and do that to the Niners week one, they are going to start dictating terms to the division on this is how it's going to be now going forward.
So can I easily say that both of you predict that the Seahawks are going to take this division in 2025?
I think so, for me at least. I think that Seattle can run away with this division if they play the way they're capable, I think, of playing this year. Yes.
I think the Rams are going to be a tough out. And unless, this back thing with Stafford ends up becoming an issue that drags into the season, they're going to be a tough out. They're going to be a team that's right there. I don't think Seattle runs away with the division, but I think it's a two-horse race coming down to the end, and we'll see what happens. But yeah, I think both of those teams, Seattle and the Rams, are quality football teams that are both among the top 7 teams in the NFC. Both are good enough and should be in the playoffs. So
interesting. Wow. I disagree in a little bit. I'll go out on a limb here and I'll just say I expect the Cardinals to step up this year. Even if Kyler Murray plays the same, I think their roster is better around him than it was last year. They won 8 games. I think they're ascending. I think that Seattle takes the division. I think the Cardinals are in second, and I think the Rams come in third. I do not expect Matthew Stafford to complete the season. And I think that's the reason that they are, diminished. I think they've got a pretty outstanding defense, but I think their offense is going to struggle to score points, especially if Matthew Stafford's not on the field. And then the 49ers, I think, are just going to be, they're just older. I think they're a couple injuries away of just being irrelevant. And I think we'll probably end up seeing that this season. But I do expect the Seattle Seahawks to reemerge as the favorite in this division, win the division, and potentially have this division for the next several years, and start competing soon to get in that NFC Championship game. And when it comes down to one game, anything can happen. And I think we're close to that. We're close to that, especially if you, Bryce, you said, I think I heard you say potentially 13 wins earlier in this show. I'm not going to hold you to that, but I, our prediction show is coming up as our next show for the regular season win-loss predictions. And I think I'm going to be in the 12 win range. I haven't completely done my exercise yet, so I don't know for sure. But at that point where you're winning 11, 12, 13 games, you're in that conversation as being one of the better teams in the NFC, and stuff comes through your house. And we haven't had that for quite a long time. And with the number one defense in our house, man, I'm looking forward to that for sure.
Yeah, as am I.
Go ahead. Yeah. Any more comments? You guys kind of want to wrap this thing up and we can get out of here, but it was a great show. And just, any final thoughts, Bryce and Keith?
I will stick to my prediction. I've said it on my show. I've said it on Dan's show. I've said it on everyone's show. I think Seattle wins 13 games and they win 2 playoff games this year. That is my bold take, that they win 2 playoff games.
Well, if they win 2 playoff games, they're in the NFC Championship game.
Correct. I think the NFC is so wide open realistically throughout. Like, really, the Eagles, yes, the Packers made their move today. We still don't know how that's going to play out. But really, the Eagles are kind of the class of the NFC. It's not like you're dealing with the AFC. We have the Bills and the Chiefs and the Bengals and the Ravens and all these teams. Really, outside of that, it's kind of a all over the place, And so that's why I think if Seattle can win 13 games and, win the division and they get in there, I don't see a reason why Seattle couldn't win 2 playoff games, depending on how it shakes out, especially if some teams in late, December and January have to come through the Pacific Northwest when it's rainy and have to take on a team where there is a lead fullback named Robbie Oots running into your middle linebacker all day long.
Nice. Keith,
if they win 13 games, there's a chance they're the number 1 seed and have the first round bye, and then winning 2 playoff games puts them in the Super Bowl. And I'm not gonna go that far. I think this is a good football team. I think it's a much better football team than nationally people are giving them credit for. I mean, guys like Scheel and Cowherd and those guys are starting to figure out that this is going to be a good defensive team, and that's going to matter. I'm not going to make a prediction until we do it on our show, but I can't go 13. I'm fairly certain I won't be that high. I'm too much of a.
It's hard to
for
bet
that,
against Bryce. I mean, come on, Keith.
Sure. I'll give you that. I'm just saying, I'm more cynical. I'm more of a curmudgeon. But even I'm fairly bullish on this team. I like what Mike McDonald has done. I like where this offense is going. I love where the defense is going. And this is going to be a good football team.
Outstanding. Yeah, I'm the same. I'm not going to do my prediction, but I said I was going to be right around 12. And I mostly agree with where Bryce is at. I will say this. That is definitely the optimistic way to look about this season. You do need a few different things along the way to line up for you. Injuries need to line up. The bounce of the ball. Jason Myers' field goal at, a last second field goal somewhere along the line. It's going to be there. It's going to happen. You're going to have that offense perform the way that we want it to perform, not the way that we think it's going to perform, but the way we want it to, which is complete competency. Everything's aligned. There's a running game. We can run pretty much whenever we want. We can close out games with the run. We can get the ball into playmakers' hands for yards after catch opportunities. Sam Darnold has a similar TD to interception ratio that he had last year. He doesn't necessarily have to throw 38 touchdowns again, or whatever that figure was. But as long as the ratio is similar, and he's taking care of the ball, I think that we're pretty well underway. And then the defense is going to be what it is. So I'm just as excited, Bryce. I agree. I'm with both of you guys. I think we're mostly aligned on that. And I think all of us really have this team taking the division and going against all the national media on that. And I think we're mostly aligned with everyone that's local that is following this team, that really kind of knows the ins and outs, the comings and goings of what the team has done with the roster, what John Schneider has done, what the coaching staff has put together. So it's pretty exciting. Really looking forward to it. Bryce, I just want to take time to give you the floor again to kind of let everyone know what you're doing. It's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me, guys. It's great to always talk Hawks with both of you, and glad Keith was able to join this time because I love Keith's insight onto the Hawks as well. So I've started a new podcast, the Hawks Eye Podcast. You can find it on YouTube. Eventually, it'll be up on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all those good areas for the audio editions. But right now, it's just on YouTube as I get it off the ground. Just released my latest first real episode with Jeff Simmons of Real Hawk Talk. Had him come on just prior to the Packers game and talk about that. We'll be having Rob Staten on coming up this week, as well as Clinton Bonner from the Seahawks podcast. And then, next week, it's right into the kind of the daily content. Got a couple different shows that'll be starting up. Wednesday will be my live pregame show, so anyone can tune into the channel over there. And just subscribe to the channel, help me regrow what I've started over there. But I always appreciate coming on here and talking Seahawks with you guys.
Outstanding. Yeah, thank you. And thanks, Keith. We appreciate you as well. You can find us, Seahawks Playbook Podcast, on your favorite podcast platforms and our YouTube channel. We love the comments. Like the show, share it if you enjoy it, and we will chat at you soon. Our next show will be the win-loss prediction show, our 9th annual show, and hope that you guys can join us for that. So until next time, go Hawks.
Go Hawks.
Go Hawks.